Hello? Oh, okay. So everyone can hear me now. Did you? So I guess first we introduce ourselves. So my name is Mary. I'm currently studying at MIT for a master's program. But other than that, I'm an artist interested in the relationship between culture and biotechnology. Yeah.
And I'm Byron. I'm professor of electronic art and intermedia at Allegheny College in Pennsylvania. And I too am just an artist. I don't really have a background in biotech or anything like that. But anyway, we should talk about the project. Okay.
Okay, so for Interactivos, we thought that we would focus on these three areas around estrogen. So these are kind of like three goals, or yeah. So synthesis, extraction, and detection. So the goal of this project, I think for me, I'm interested in more of the social, political aspects of the estrogen. But I think that whatever we make or whatever we prototype or explore, I think it's important to think about this in terms of decolonizing the female body or demystifying laboratory practices, and also having this cultural injection. So how can we make the public feel like they have a stake in this issue? So, and then we can all, as citizens, perform this biotechnical civil disobedience. So when we first started the project, we were mostly focused on synthesis. So what if you could make estrogen in your kitchen? So we were thinking about this kind of speculative scenario where it's the housewives are making estrogen in the kitchen instead of making food for the family. So. So estrogen, what is it used for, right? So it's sex hormone for obviously women, but actually it's pretty common in contraceptives, so birth control pills. So do you want to describe how your experience with the contraceptives?
Sure. So I guess the first thing, we've had a few people say we need to explain estrogen a little bit better. So I think that's what we should get into a little bit. So estrogen is the most ancient of sex hormones. It's kind of a fascinating thing in that there's two main sex hormones in female kind of frame sex hormones, progesterone and estrogen. Estrogen is largely responsible for the physical development side of things. So a few years ago, I moved to the United States and from Canada, and I was bewildered when my girlfriend was explaining to me how difficult it is, how many barriers there are to actually get birth control in the United States. Everybody has their hands in your own kind of body sovereignty. So there's insurance companies, your employer, the government, churches, all these different folks have some amount of say over whether or not you get to actually have control over your reproduction, or even more difficult, over hormone therapy if you're, for instance, a trans woman. So I found this all very bewildering coming from Canada, where you just go to the pharmacy and pay 14 cents or something and they give you birth control and away you go. So I found this all very alarming, and I kind of was thinking, well, I had seen a project where someone had created aspirin, open source aspirin, that worked not at all, but it was an interesting idea. And so I thought maybe we could do this with birth control. But then I realized that as a heterosexual white male from Canada, that maybe this was very dubious terrain for me to start traversing. So I put the idea on the back burner and didn't do anything else with it. It just sat in my mind as something that would have been cool if I had been born differently. And then a few years later, I happened upon this character through a mutual person that we know, and we started chatting a little bit, and then we Mary came and visited Heather and I in Germany. And from there, we started talking about this project. And then we went to the Arctic together for Ars BioArctica. And I told her what I was thinking a few years ago. And Mary was like, I've got so many ideas around this. And Mary kind of took this whole idea to a very interesting and much more involved level than I would have ever. So that's how the project started. That's a little overview of what estrogen is. And we will carry on. So this is just a slide. Oh, sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, so this, what I found was really interesting is that how can normal citizens kind of go around the governments and the institutions to have the access to the hormones. And so through that path, I was thinking, like, what is it actually used for? So Byron explained birth control pills. But then there's also this kind of aspect about gender hacking. So what if you're transitioning from male to female, male to trans, and you're taking this estrogen? You can modify your gender and your sex, and you start to think about how is sex and gender defined in society, and how is it this kind of a social construction. So I think that biotechnology, when it becomes like more accessible, it kind of increases the range of options, right? You can be in between the binaries, right? The male and female. So yeah, and so when we were thinking about the synthesis, then we started thinking, well, there's so much estrogen already in the environment. So if people are like making in their kitchen, then what if it starts to like escape and increase the pollution already in the water? So we started to focus more on this extraction and detection techniques. So, and also thinking about how we're experiencing this sort of collective mutagenesis, right? So, so Byron explained before, like estrogen is like it's the most ancient sex hormone. And so that means that it's not just like humans that are affected, but it's like all the animals, like fish and frogs, and they are all experiencing this feminization. And I like to think about it in terms of like a molecular colonization of our waters and our bodies.
We should talk a little bit about where this is all coming from.
Yeah, the source.
So we're talking about all these estrogens that are kind of like leaching into the environment, and they come from multiple places. There's something called BPAs that exist largely in plastics that are like an estrogenic compound. They're not estrogen per se, but they're endocrine disruptors that have a similar effect. So BPAs are one of the main sources that are really affecting creatures other than humans, and humans, of course. Other than that, it used to be a couple of years ago that like suburban like housewives, quote unquote, we're using that term kind of ironically, were blamed for, that's a hole, okay. Yeah, so like suburban housewives and whatever were blamed for estrogen leaching into the environment because of birth control pills. But that's not actually the case. A lot of it was coming from agriculture, but agricultural lobbies, of course, and like big pharma lobbies have so much sway in the United States that they were really able to shift the blame onto women, onto an already marginalized sector, because that's what they're really good at. So we were kind of super fascinated by how that was happening. So we wanted to use this like kind of use the idea of the housewife ironically to kind of like subvert in a subversive notion in this like tactical engineering kind of way. So should we carry on from there? I think that's good enough? Okay, cool. All right. So these are the two main facets of the project: environmental toxicity and how that's like acts as hormone disruption, and body and gender sovereignty, or sort of hormone dissonance. This body and gender sovereignty topic is highly contentious. The big issue with this project that we're facing is that it could be potentially hugely dangerous to actually perform hormone therapy on yourself. So we're not necessarily looking at it as a practical thing, but more as a statement on how ridiculous all these limitations to access are and how they need to be broken down. So by creating this, we're kind of creating like a
like an ethical discussion.
Yeah, like an ethical discussion around the potential. Okay, I'll let you.
Yeah, so we're going to talk more like practically about, what we're kind of envisioning. So the first like main like topic is detection. So how can we detect the estrogens in the environment, and how can we also like contextualize it in a way where it's not just like we're just geeking with biosensors, but actually we're setting up these like gynecological clinics, for rivers. Next. And also, are we able to extract like from the environment and potentially like purify it in a way where we can actually use it as humans, or maybe even not use it, but actually not for a practical purpose, but as maybe like a ritualistic idea of having responsibility for the industrial pollution that we create in the environment. So that's another like idea that we have. And of course, we've been traveling actually a lot for the past 3 weeks and carrying around like all this lab equipment. So these are some sort of DIY tools that we brought with us that are related to the project. So, I have some yeast biosensors. Tomorrow I will have. And Byron also brought some reverse osmosis filtration, which is able to extract some molecules from the environment, but we have to actually separate the estrogen. And then there's also some BPA detection. It's pretty simple. And also some DIY spectrometry to like see like the color change and things like that. But we're gonna focus a little bit more on the biosensors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of this stuff that we've been bringing with us is in really rough shape after globetrotting, so we need to rebuild a lot of it and find some of these components again, because some were taken by airport security and some were just destroyed, and Hong Kong apparently has some real tight regulations over what you can bring in. So, the other thing I should mention that I think we should, that we want to pursue while we're here, other than just the biosensor, is also the estrolocation app, or estrolocation Google Map extension, where people can more or less use the detection techniques that we're planning on building and go out into the world and then actually like drop pins with information onto like a Google Map, like into a database, so that other people can go out and extract estrogenic compounds from those localized areas.
Yeah, so the main research that I've been doing is this like yeast biosensor. So basically, YES stands for yeast estrogen sensor, and HER stands for human estrogen receptor. And I really like to play with acronyms, so I really like how it says, like, does it say yes to HER? So does the yeast detect the estrogen? So basically, this plasmid, it contains a human estrogen receptor, and I actually like put it into the yeast, and the yeast actually change yellow when they come in contact with estrogen. So I think this is a very simple, like, if you guys don't have any like experience with biohacking or biosensors, it's like basically you always have like input and output. So the input is estrogen, and the output would be the yellow color change. So it's like yeah, it's pretty simple, and I was interested in this idea because I thought it was like very feasible, and we can do it very easily, and then we can collect some samples and test it. So, and what's also nice about biology is that it's self-replicating. So once you have the yeast, and you have it forever, you just have to grow it, and yeah, because normally how people would detect stuff from in the water, you have to take to a laboratory, and you have to use this huge like machine that's called a mass spectrometer. And so this is really kind of impossible for like average person. So and with the help of like some really awesome biohacker friends, I got to really make this project work. So this is totally, we're working as amateurs actually. Like I have some biology background, but some years ago, and And I really it's really great to be working in this like global community where you can just chat online and they give you some advice, and it's really a nice biohacking community. So this is a picture of the color change, so you can see like it works. So yeah, hopefully we can expand on this more, but we're also super open to any kind of possible collaborations, because this project is actually like pretty new, and if there's like better ways to perform the detection or perform the extraction, like we can explore this more. But also like I think it's good to like keep in mind also like the social and the cultural and the political aspects of this project. Yeah. And, yeah.
Anything else you want to say? Okay, I think I'll wrap it up just by quickly prefacing why this is so important, like from the context from which we're coming from. I should have done this earlier, but we're really interested in demystifying a lot of the processes of like the biological sciences, and just really pointing out how deeply marginalizing and unfair like even this project kind of is in a way. It's kind of self-defeating in that the people that could most benefit from it are the ones that are most likely, at least in the United States, to already have access, relatively easy access to both birth control and hormone therapy. So those being like educated individuals. So the fact that you need like specialized knowledge largely to perform a lot of the things that we've currently been doing is hugely problematic, because most people that could benefit the most don't have that educational background. So we're really looking to simplify the processes and make it much more accessible so that the project isn't kind of self-defeating. There is something interesting conceptually about it being self-defeating, but yeah. So then to wrap it up, I guess we're looking at this biosensing thing and then this like Google Maps extension, and those are really the two things. And it doesn't sound like much, but I think it'll be kind of complicated. Any questions? Cool. Is that worrisome? Oh, we do have a question.
I'm just curious. Well, congratulations for your project. I find it really interesting. I didn't come to collaborate like at the beginning with this project, but now that I've heard you, it's really interesting. But my question goes exactly to what kind of a collaboration are you looking for? I mean, what kind of practical exercises or process are you thinking about, and how would you be open to collaborating with what kind of people? Or yeah.
Do you want to field that one?
I think it's pretty pretty broad. Obviously, it's nice to meet some people with some biology experience, but we're also interested to like kind of meet some local experts who know some local like water sources, or who understand this sort of like ecotoxicology, and who know how like how these synthetic hormones like actually mutate bodies, so because the whole point of this, I think, is to kind of draw this awareness of how this molecule is so pervasive, it's affecting all of our bodies, and think of ways to like get people like kind of mobilize more interest like in sort of this this estrogen like everywhere. So
I think,
but
can I add
for the
something?
app, yeah.
I think also just anybody who's got any like programming experience or who's good at HTML, I am not good at, and it's just that I don't really want to do it. I hate writing code so much, more than anything in the world. And yeah, what was the other? Even people that are just interested conceptually in it, in helping us like flesh out. There's so many issues that sometimes we overlook. Like I was overlooking a million things when I first came up with this, and that's why I didn't pursue it. And Mary fleshed it out like crazy, but still we run into like concerns that people have all the time. And so we would love like critiques for sure too. Totally open to it.
Yeah, because like this project, it touches on, body and gender politics, so we've had like so many like different criticisms about like what if the estrogen is deregulated and all these things, right? So, but we're super open to hear their comments and to see like how we can kind of like affect like the minds of other people. So, in a way, it's like mind fucking, we're trying to like mind fuck people. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
Okay. let's slowly walk away.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.